Hi, and thanks for tuning in. The most important question of this election season, and maybe even our entire generation, is whether rising wages are prosperity or inflation. Are rising wages good or bad? If you think rising wages are inflation, you should watch this video to see the destruction that viewpoint is causing on our country. If you think like I do that rising wages are prosperity, then you must watch this video and join the fight to let wage growth happen. Let's start here. This shows income adjusted for inflation for the top 10% of the country versus the bottom 90% for the period 1948 to 2012. Here, rising wages were welcomed as a sign of prosperity, resulting in the golden age of the middle class. Then Federal Reserve policy changed. Now rising wages are treated as inflation, resulting in stagnant wages for the striving majority for over 40 years. The Federal Reserve had a single mandate to stabilize the dollar. Now the Fed has a dual mandate of full employment and low inflation. Before, inflation used to be defined as a decline in the value of the dollar. It has since been redefined to mean an increase in a price index that is a lagging indicator. Faced with the dilemma of having to make real-time policy decisions to affect a lagging inflation index, academic economists at the Fed start to target wages. They wrongly assume rising wages must be inflation, since labor is an input cost to goods and services that comprise their lagging index. In practice, the Fed lowers interest rates early in an economic cycle, boosting capital income, then later raises interest rates to prevent benefits of economic growth from boosting wage income. Thus, the Fed's dual mandate has become a double standard. When the Fed let wage growth happen, the striving majority saw income increase 86% in 23 years. Since then, the striving majority sees stagnation for 41 years. What would you rather have, this or this? Should we stabilize the dollar and let wage growth happen, or float the dollar and stabilize wages? Here, if you work hard, you can climb the ladder and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Here, if you work hard, the Fed will grease the ladder and you will barely taste the fruits of your labor. To see how this happens, let's zoom in here. Reagan's tax cuts are fully implemented. They worked. The striving majority is the most prosperous since the 1960s. But then the Fed, treating wage growth as inflation, stamps it out. Then you had the contract with America and its crown jewel, the capital gains tax cut. It worked. The striving majority is the most prosperous in 30 years. But then the Fed stamped it out. Then you had the 2003 Bush tax cuts. They worked. They gave the striving majority the only prosperity they've seen in the last decade, but the Fed stamped it out. In other words, supply-side tax cuts worked and workers got decent raises here, here, and here. But big government, who knows best and claims to help people, took them away here, here, and here. Some want you to believe that tax cuts have lost some luster, and others claim they only benefit the rich. Of course, this has nothing to do with tax cuts, for they have delivered the only prosperity in 40 years to the striving majority. It has everything to do with the Fed stamping out rising wages as though they are inflation. If we let wage growth happen, income for the striving majority would be 2.5 times greater than it is today. If we let wage growth happen and income for the striving majority was 2.5 times greater than it is today, would any of our country's current problems still be problems? This is why we have a spending deficit and debt problems, and an entitlement program insolvency problem, and poverty and dependency problems. This is why a younger generation is open to socialism, why we re-elected an empty slogan like hope and change, and why voters accept redistribution and resist austerity. Republican silence on this stagnation is taken by the electorate to imply guilt that conservative policies caused this. If Republicans want a new brand, they should commit to turning this into this. This appeals to every demographic and will unite the country. This does the most to solve the most problems and does so at the lowest cost. Personal prosperity is the only proven remedy that inoculates voters from falling victim to the utopian lies of big government. This is the best poverty program, and this is the American dream. When Clinton delivered the strongest income growth in 30 years to the striving majority, they gave him a mandate so strong he withstood impeachment. Want to win elections and have a mandate so strong you can reform government and return power to the people and to the states? Deliver income growth to the striving majority stronger than this. How? Reform the Federal Reserve. Return them to a single mandate to stabilize the dollar. Let wage growth happen. Society depends on stable units of measure, and the dollar is no exception. Imagine if we floated time, put it under the government's control, and an hour wasn't always 60 minutes. But will a stable dollar help revive this lousy economy? Of course it will. All economic growth and all job creation is driven by business investment, and business investment depends on a stable unit of measure. In other words, a stable dollar. This is the worst recovery since the Depression, precisely because this is the worst recovery in business investment. Given that every new dollar of business investment will generate 43 to 48 cents of new GDP, and with trillions having flowed into hedges and shelters, moved into tangible assets, sitting on the sidelines, parked overseas, or piling up on balance sheets, there is tremendous potential to ignite a genuine economic boom by stabilizing the dollar. If low interest rates and tame readings in the CPI or GDP deflator were important to business investment, this would be a record-setting economic boom. To the contrary, the private sector is screaming loud and clear, a stable dollar is way more important to business investment. You can make a difference. Support the Brady-Cornyn Centennial Monetary Commission. By passing Brady-Cornyn right now, we can make the 2014 elections a referendum on this. Should we continue stagnation and raise the minimum wage, or deliver this and raise the market wage? Join the fight. Sign the petition by clicking here, and tell your congressman to co-sponsor Brady-Cornyn and let wage growth happen. So it all boils down to this. Do you really think we will ever have a sustained period of across-the-board prosperity if we continue to allow the Federal Reserve to treat your income as inflation? Or will you join me and let wage growth happen?